Hey guys, how's it going? I hope you're having a very good day. So for today's video, I'm here to do a tutorial on how I create my YouTube thumbnail images. More specifically, how I mask out the background so I could place whatever imagery I'd like behind me. So let's get started. I know this is going to be a lengthy video. So for myself, I do use Photoshop to create my thumbnail images, and I know not everyone has the program. So I thought I could show you how you could achieve the same results using a free open source software like GIMP, which is a photo editing program similar to Photoshop. So if you go to GIMP's website, which I have ready right over here, and you click on the downloads link, you'll see an installer for the Mac operating system. And if you scroll down and click on show other downloads and scroll down further, you'll see an installer for Windows. And I recommend just reading through all of this just to be sure that the program is compatible with your computer. And if so, you could go ahead and download and install that. And if you are using Photoshop to create your thumbnail images, you could certainly apply the techniques I'm about to show in GIMP in Photoshop as well. So let's get started with the thumbnail making magic. So the first thing I'm going to do is just open the image I'd like to use for my thumbnail, which I have ready right over here, along with other images I'll be using later on in the tutorial. So to open it, I'm just going to drag it from the Finder window here and into this window in GIMP, like so. Alright, so this is the GIMP program, and this is the image window right over here. To the left of it is the toolbox, and we'll also be using the layers window as well as the paths window later on in the video. So getting back to the image, as you can see, I took a screenshot while in After Effects, which is the program I use to add in all the effects and animations you see in my videos. And I've find my thumbnail image while scrubbing through my video in After Effects. So I don't take any photos specifically for my thumbnail. Yeah, that's just how I do it. But anyways, back to the image. What I'm gonna do first is crop it. I just wanna use this area right over here. To do that, I'm just going to use the crop tool, and as you can see, if you hover over the tools, a descriptor for that tool will pop up, and at the very end of that descriptor is a keyboard shortcut. So feel free to use whatever you feel comfortable with, the keyboard shortcuts or just clicking on the icon itself. But before I use the crop tool, I'm just going to zoom in on the image just so I have a more accurate crop, like so. So selecting on the crop tool, crosshairs will appear where the cursor is, and I'll just use that as my guide as I select the image I want to keep. And to do that, I'm just going to hold down on the mouse and drag this square. And once I am happy with the selection, I am going to release my mouse and hit return to crop the image like that. Next, what I want to do is adjust the canvas size so it is the correct dimensions for a YouTube thumbnail, which is 1280 pixels wide by 720 pixels high. So to do that, I'm going to click on Image and Canvas Size, and I'm going to change the width to 1280 and the height to 720. And I'm going to leave the offset as is. That is just the origin point of where the canvas size will resize. And 00 is just this top left corner right over here. And since I'm all good with that, I'm going to click on resize. And so now the canvas is the correct dimensions for a YouTube thumbnail. And as you can see, the canvas size changed, but the image itself did not. I need to scale it up. So to do that, I'm going to use the scale tool right over here. If your image is larger than 1280 by 720, you'll want to scale it down. And now I'm just going to click on the object I want to scale. And so the first thing you'll want to make a note of is this link button right over here. Right now it is selected. If it is deselected, if you change the height of one dimension, let's say the height to 720, you'll see the other dimension remain the same and the image itself will skew, which I do not want. So I'm just going to hit the reset button to go back. And so selecting the link button, if I change the dimension of one again, you'll see the other dimension scale in proportion, which is what I do want. So the width is now 1280, which is perfect, the exact same size as my canvas. If the width is slightly larger or slightly smaller than the canvas size, that's fine because we'll be masking out the background anyways. What I really wanted to make note of is that the image that I'm keeping, in this case it's myself, is the same height as the canvas. So since that is correct, I'm gonna hit scale to apply that effect. Alright, so next what I want to do is mask out the background, and masking is a non-destructive editing technique. What I'll be doing is essentially hiding the background. I won't be deleting it permanently, just so if I ever need to use the background again, I could easily do so. So to do that, I'm going to have to use the pen tool, or the path tool. In Photoshop it's called the pen tool, but they both do the same thing. But anyways, I'm gonna use the path tool to trace around myself, and once I do that, I'm gonna apply a layer mask to the image. So what I'm gonna do first is use the zoom tool just to zoom in on the image, just so when I use the path tool, I'm more accurate while tracing around myself. And you could really start from anywhere you want. So let's say I want to start right over here. I'm gonna zoom in on that area and selecting on the path tool. The first thing I want to do is create a node, and so to do that, I'm gonna select along the path I'm tracing. So let's say right over here. And so as you can see, a node is created, this square shape right over here. The next thing I want to do is create another node. The only difference this time is that I'll be holding down on the mouse. And while doing that, I'm going to drag my cursor, and as you can see, 2 additional squares pop up. Those are called anchor points, and so one of the anchor points is where my cursor is right now, and the other anchor point is on the opposite end of that yellow line. And so when I drag on the anchor points this way, the curve in between the 2 nodes curves to the right, and so if I move the anchor point this way, the curve in between the 2 nodes curves to the left. So that's the line I really want to focus on. So the path is wrapping around the object I'm tracing. So if I move the anchor point like so, I think the line is wrapping around my shirt pretty nicely. So to apply that, I'm just going to release my mouse. And so that's what I'll be doing around me, is creating nodes and moving the anchor point, so the path in between the 2 nodes is wrapping around myself. I'll talk through using the path tool as I come across instances where I think it might be useful. But anyways, I'm gonna bring that anchor point back, and so to create another node, I'm gonna hold down my mouse and drag it so the line in between the 2 nodes is wrapping around my shoulder. Since that is looking good, I'm going to release my mouse, and I'm going to move the anchor point somewhere around here, and I'm going to create another node, move the anchor point so it's wrapping around my shoulder. And so I keep doing that until I come back to my first node over here. And another thing to make note of is that you want to create smooth curves around the object you're tracing. So you could do that by using less nodes. You don't want to create multiple nodes like this around the image you're tracing, just because you could achieve it with fewer nodes and with a smoother curve. As you can see, these lines are just straight and rigid, which you do not want. So I'm just gonna Command Z to undo that. So you could achieve tracing this path right over here with very few nodes, like so, by dragging. So you want to create smooth curves like so. And again, that'll come with practice and time. You'll definitely get a better intuition of where to place the nodes and where to move the anchor points. And in school, our instructors would have us trace around logos like the Starbucks logo, the Apple logo, Nike, just so we could become more familiar with the pen/path tool. So that's what I recommend doing. So if you could definitely master tracing around the Starbucks logo, there should be no problem at all. And so I'm going to continue on. So as you can see, I didn't bring this anchor point back to this node. What that does is that when I create a new node, the computer will guess where the curve should be. So let's say I want to place a new node here. The computer creates a slight curve like that, which is pretty good. I'm just gonna hit undo because I want the node a bit closer in, like so. And so now I could adjust the anchor point so that line in between the two nodes is wrapping around my head a little bit better. And so if I move the node back, what that will do is I have a better control of where the curve will happen, like so. All right. So continuing on, like that. And so I usually create my thumbnails when I am waiting for my video to upload on YouTube, which is a lot of time. So it definitely gives me time to scrub through the video to find a suitable thumbnail, and it gives me time to close cut around the image that I want and gather all the imagery I like to use in my thumbnails. So I think it's definitely worth putting a little bit of effort into making the thumbnail look kind of eye-catching. I know there's some drawbacks to showing certain imagery in the thumbnail, like how I use my book covers to kind of indicate what kind of books I'll be talking about or revealing in the video. But I don't know, I just like how it looks, I guess. But anyways, right now I'm at the very bottom of the image, so what I want to do next is just zoom out so I could continue close cutting just beneath the image. So to do that, I'm going to select the zoom tool and I'm just going to click on the command key, hold down the command key and click on the image to zoom out. And as you can see, the path I just created disappeared. So to have it reappear, I'm just going to open my path window and double click on this path I created, like so. So since the pen tool is still selected, I'm gonna go on my merry way with close cutting around the image like that. And now I wanna zoom back in just so the trace is more accurate. So again, double clicking on the path I created will have the path reappear. And so I'm just gonna finish close cutting around my hand. So yes, if you don't pull the anchor point back to the node that you created last, the computer will kind of guess where the curve should happen. So again, with practice and over time, you'll get a better sense and intuition of how the computer will create the curve and path. Like that. All right, so we're almost down to the wire. And I just love scrolling through my past videos and just see the evolution of my thumbnails and seeing how it was from the very beginning to how it just evolved over the years. It's pretty cool to see. And yeah, I guess it was only until maybe a couple years ago that I'm like just really satisfied with the style of thumbnails I've been creating. I think it's kind of eye-catching and colorful. I love how colorful scrolling through my videos is. But anyways, since we are back to the beginning, what I want to do is close the path. And to do that, I have to click on this first node. In Photoshop, all you have to do to close the path is just click on the first node. In GIMP, however, I have to hold down the command key. And as you can see, hovering over the first node, you can see the 4-pointed arrow. If I hold down the command key, that changes to a link symbol. So that's what I want. So I'm going to select the first node like that. And now I've closed the path that I've created. And what I'm going to do next is just create a path around this area right over here because I want to mask out that area as well. So I'm going to create a new path by just tracing around my hair like that. And as you can see, I want to create a new node, but it's quite close to one of the existing paths. So to make sure you're creating a node, if you hover over the path you created, you could see again the 4-pointed arrow. And so if I just move my cursor slightly to the right, crosshairs will come up, and that will indicate that you'll be creating a new node, which I do want. So I will hold down my mouse to create a new node, drag the anchor point like so, create a new node, and now I want to close the path that I created by again holding down the command key and clicking on the first node like that. And you can go back to adjusting the anchor points and nodes by just clicking on the node and moving it. And I just want to move this node slightly that way, just so the trace is more accurate. So there you go. So now I'm just going to zoom out by again clicking on the command key and clicking on the image. Alright, so now it's time to mask out the background. So what I'm going to do next is double click on the path I created, so the path will come up. I'm going to click on selection from path in the tool options window right over here. And if you click on other tools like that, different options for that specific tool will pop up right over here. So selecting on the path tool yet again and double clicking on the path I created, I'm going to click on selection from path, and as you can see, marching ants appear around the image I just traced. So what I want to do next is add the mask layer by going layer, mask, add layer mask, and after playing around with these different options, the one you want to select is selection, and so you want to click on add. So now I have masked out the background. So if I deselect by going select none, I want to hide the path. So I could do that just by clicking on one of the tools. And there you go. So now I have a transparent background, and I could add whatever images I'd like behind me. And like I said, again, if I want to use the background, if I ever have a need to go back to the original image, I could do so by, let's say if I select the brush tool. And so in the photo editing program with mask, white indicates showing the image and black indicates transparency. So to show the image, I'm going to select white, and I could use the brush tool to brush over the background, and it reappears just like that. And so since I don't want that, I'll just go back to Command Z. But yeah, basically you could have the background reappear by using the brush tool or the paint bucket tool and having the white paint selected, and that will have the image reappear. And so yeah, that's the magic of mask. So next what I want to do is add a white shadow behind me. That's kind of my thing that I do. So to do that, I'm just going to create a new layer. I'm going to leave everything as is. I'm going to go OK. Under the path window, I'm going to double click on the path, and I'm going to click on selection from path to bring up the marching ants. I'm going to select the paint bucket tool, and I'm going to fill in that area of the selection like so. And next, I'm just going to move the white shadow layer just beneath the screenshot layer I have. So I'm just going to select none for now, move this layer behind my screenshot layer, and I'm going to move it slightly to the left by clicking on the move tool. You want to make sure under tool options that the move layer icon is selected and move the active layer is selected as well. I'm going to move it slightly to the left. And I think that looks pretty good. I'll move it slightly more, just so when it scales down, you could see it. You could see the layer a bit better. Oop. Alright, so that's looking pretty good. So next what I want to do is actually blur the close cut I just created, just so when I add the images behind me, it blends into the background a bit better. So selecting on the blur tool right over here, it also doubles as the sharpen tool. I'm going to select that. So when you scroll down, you could change the tool from blur to sharpen. I'm going to change the rate or the strength to 75. And I'm just going to make sure the mask layer is selected, and you could see it selected with that white border around the mask. You could also adjust the screenshot image by selecting on it, and as you can see, the white border moves to this layer, but I want it to adjust to the mask layer. So using the blur tool, I'm just gonna trace around the close cut. Again, just blurring it just so the close cut isn't as harsh, as stark when I place images behind me. It just softens the edge a little bit better. Alright, so next what I want to do is add in the images behind me. So going back to the Finder window here, I have book cover images that I'd like to use for this thumbnail. So I'm gonna just select all of that, and I'm just gonna drag it into GIMP like that. Alright, so it opened all the images, and I'm now just gonna copy the image and paste it into this window over there. And to do that, I have to go Edit, Copy, and selecting this window, I'm gonna go Edit, Paste as, New Layer. And I'm just gonna close that. And you could also use the keyboard shortcut to copy, which is Command C, which I just did. Selecting on this window, I'm gonna paste as New Layer. And I'll do that with the rest of the book covers. In Photoshop, this copying and pasting as new layer isn't necessary. In Photoshop, you could actually just select the image using the Move tool or the Selection tool and just drag the image into the window, which is a bit quicker, but this achieves the same results anyways, so that's what I'm going to do. And I just love these vintage classics children's covers. I was browsing on their website and I didn't realize they had new covers of these books, so I want all of them. It's cool that I'm able to use them for this purpose anyways, because who knows when I'll be able to get these covers, so at least I could see them in a thumbnail. Alright, and if you guys are just curious to what the size of the book covers are in relation to the thumbnail image, if I go under Image and Canvas size, the image for the book cover is 371 pixels wide by 540 pixels high. So I'm just gonna click on Cancel, go Edit, Paste as, New Layer, and I think that's all of it. Yes, it is. Alright, so now what I want to do is arrange the book covers behind me. So I'm gonna expand this layers window. I am going to move all of the layers just behind the screenshot layer and the white shadow layer I just created by just clicking on the layer and dragging it down, clicking and dragging, clicking and dragging, like so. Now what I want to do is move the book covers, and what I usually do is pull a guide so I could divide the thumbnail in half. So this is 720 pixels high, so the halfway point is 360. What I'm gonna do is drag a guide by clicking in the ruler over here and dragging the guide. And if you watch this very bottom here, it'll indicate where that guide is. So like I said, I'm gonna click in the ruler, I'm gonna drag the guide, and like I said, at the bottom of the image window says Add Guide, and so I'm just gonna make sure it's at 360, like that, and I'm gonna release my mouse, and now I could move my book cover. So to do that, I'll have to make sure I'm selected on the correct layer, and I select the Move tool and move the active layer. So I'm just gonna move it like that. And if you have snap to guides on, that'll just make moving the book covers easier. So to do that, to make sure that's on, it's under View, Snap to Guides. And I think Photoshop has something similar to that effect. So I'm gonna move Anne of Green Gables next, just right down below, like so. I'm gonna select Just So Stories and move it up here. And I'm gonna move Heidi down below here. Next, I love this cover. I'm gonna select that layer and move it just above here. And lastly, Grimm's Fairy Tale, select that cover and move it down here. Alright, so next, as you could see the transparency behind me. I want to move my screenshot layer and my white shadow layer just to the right, so I'm covering that. So in Photoshop, what I usually could do is select both layers and move it to the right, but in GIMP, I'll have to do it one layer at a time. So it's selecting on my screenshot layer. I'm gonna select the move tool and making sure I actually want to have my screenshot layer selected, so I'm gonna click on that, and I know it's selected because the white border is showing up on the screenshot layer, and so I'm just gonna move it to the right, so I'm just covering the transparency, and I'm gonna move my white shadow layer to the right as well, like so. Alright, so that looks pretty good. And so if I go view, show guides, just so I could hide the guides, and there you have it. So I have my book covers arranged like so. Next, what I'm gonna do is just add that colored bar at the bottom and add in some text as the descriptor for the video. So I'm actually going to bring up back my Finder window, and I have a reference image to use, so I'm gonna drag it in GIMP here. So like the book covers, I'm gonna go Command C, I go edit paste as new layer, and I'm just gonna use this as my reference just so I get the size kind of close to this, just so it's consistent. I'm a big consistency person. I'm that person. I'm gonna close that. So selecting on the rectangle select tool, I am gonna create a new layer. I'm gonna go OK. So I'm just gonna eyeball how big this rectangle is. Let's say it's kind of that big. That looks pretty good. So once I'm okay with the size, I'm going to release my mouse. And now I'm gonna fill it with white, so this will act as my white shadow layer. And so I'm gonna select where the marching ants is to create that. Next, what I wanna do is have the colored bar on top of it. So I wanna select the color I'd like to use. So I'm just gonna hide that for now. So to do that, what I usually do is pull a color from one of the book covers just to tie in everything. And since there's a whole lot of green going on, I'm going to select a green color, and I know what color I want to use, so it's from the Grimm's Fairy Tale cover. So to grab a color from that specific layer, you want to make sure the layer is selected. Click the color picker tool here and select the color I want, which is that, which is pretty good. Next up, what I want to do is create a new layer, go OK, select the paint bucket tool, and fill in that layer with green, the color I selected. So going to select none, and showing that white layer again. What I want to do now is rotate it slightly, ever so slightly, because I'm that way. So using the rotate tool, I'm going to select on the object I want to rotate. I'm going to move this -1 degrees, click on rotate. I'm going to do the same thing with the white layer, and this is -1 as well. Go rotate. Next, what I want to do, I'm just going to hide this briefly and create the text tutorial. So selecting on the text tool, I'm going to select here. So, and I'm going to write tutorial. And I'm going to select this text by going Command A. I'm going to change the font color to white. So the only drawback I think with using GIMP is there's, I believe, a limited amount of fonts you could use in GIMP. I think it's the only default fonts on your computer. And for this tutorial, it'll work just fine, but I guess if you have other fonts in mind you want to use for your thumbnail images, that might be a problem. If you have been using GIMP a lot longer and are more familiar with the program, and if there is a way to activate the fonts you have downloaded from the internet to use in this program, definitely let me know in the comments below so I could try that out. But if I click on that box, I'm gonna choose Avenir Next Heavy, which is right over here, which is kind of close to the font I use in my thumbnails, and I'm going to change the size to 117. Alright, so using the move tool, so I'm going to roughly place the bars just where it is. Oop, I'm going to go undo, select the white layer. Alright, so that looks pretty good. I'm going to hide these two for now. Oop. Move this right over here, and I think that's looking pretty close. So I'm going to hide this again and have this reappear, and there we go. And I'm going to actually rotate tutorial so it's the same angle as the bar below it, and there you go. That's how you do. So that's how I create my thumbnail images. I think GIMP did a really great job in recreating the thumbnail images I create in Photoshop. To save this, what you want to do is export it as a JPEG. So going File, Export As, and I'm gonna call this thumbnail GIMP. And I'm gonna change this down here, the file format, to JPEG. Where is it? It's alphabetical. And the weird thing about GIMP is that I actually have to type in the file format. In Photoshop, it usually just does that for me, but I'll have to type it in manually. So I'm gonna go Export, and I'm gonna change the quality to 100% and click on Export. And there you go. And what you wanna do is also save this building file. So if you want to create your thumbnails consistently, all you have to do is change out your screenshot image and your background images, but the text remains the same, this bar remains in the same position. You don't have to recreate the whole thing again. So to do that, you go File, Save, and I'll just call this Build Thumbnail GIMP. The file format extension is XCF, so I'm just going to click on Save. And there you go. So if I close that, File, Open Recent, Build, GIMP Thumbnail. So when opening that file, you could see the layers still intact. And yeah, so you could pretty much just change out all of these background images, and you don't have to recreate the whole thing yet again. So closing that, as you can see, this is the thumbnail image I created in GIMP, and this is the thumbnail image I created in Photoshop, and I think they're a pretty close match, if I do say so myself. So feel free to try out this tutorial. I hope this video was informative. Yeah, if you have any questions about GIMP, definitely let me know in the comments below. I'll try to answer that for you. I specifically learned how to do this for this tutorial, so hopefully if there's others who have used GIMP a lot longer and is more familiar with the program, hopefully they'll be able to give you their insight into the program as well. But anyways, guys, I really hope you enjoyed this video. I will talk to you later and have a very good one. Bye.